Hi, I'm Scott Rickstraw. Thank you for coming tonight. We want to walk through a tournament walkthrough so that for new coaches and from experienced coaches, you kind of know what to prepare for and try to make your life a little easier as coaches and volunteers. So to give you a little bit about my background is I'm a judge advisor for VADC. I've coached for over 5 years. I've coached teams ranging from all boys like the Code Crackers, who are now all 10th graders, to the Capital Girls 2, Capital Girls, and now the Capital Teens, which is one of the longest running teams in VADC. The Capital Girls is a team that has been around since very early on, and the whole goal of that is an all-girls team. And part of that is we're trying to bring diversity to technology companies and let these girls know that they can pursue anything. And so the big thing for them in doing programming and so forth is so they know that's a career option for them when they move forward. They've actually done quite well in competition. A lot of that's just from experience. This is a picture of them at the Legoland tournament last spring, back in May. And they had a great time, great location. We're going to walk through several different things today, but I kind of just want to walk you through a day in the life of a tournament. The first thing we're going to cover is really preparing your parents, because from experience that can be one of the hardest and one of the biggest challenges you'll face as a coach. Then we're going to walk through going from check-in to your coaches meeting to robot game and how the 4 runs work and how there's a practice run and what scores matter, to getting into the judging rooms, core values, technical and project. Then talk about kind of judges' deliberations and how the awards and everything work. The biggest thing to keep in mind in robotics is the robot will fail. And if you look at robot scores, they can range. You can see a team get a 25 in one run and a 300 in their next run. So keep that in mind and don't let the robot score dictate your team's attitude. Big thing about that is, and this is important for parents because they don't necessarily know about all the other components of FLL, is when it fails, just remind them, hey, remember Thomas Edison? He went through like 10,000 filaments before getting the light bulb correct. And like I said, parents are typically doing drop-off, or they may not be as involved, or you may have a grandparent coming to the tournament, but they have no idea what this is about, or it's their first year. One of the key things is prepare them. And this is the email I send out to my teams every year. The first one is, the kids know what they're doing. They will make mistakes. It's okay. For my girls' team, the team was getting ready to go in and do a run, and they were turning on the robot and doing things, and 2 of the parents jumped down and started doing things. Now, these parents had never touched this robot at all. And I'm like, what are you doing? Well, I just want to make sure they don't mess up. It's like, they know more about, and I said, can I talk to you for a second? I pulled them off. I said, these girls have been practicing. They know the robot better than I do and better than you do. All you're doing is making them nervous. So your better bet is to step back, because guess what? The kids feed off of their parents and they feed off the coach. If the coach is nervous and stressed, it's going to reflect in their team. Another example of that is we had a core values challenge at our state tournament. My girls, I don't go in the room with them. They went in, they came out, they were just completely devastated. They thought that they had really messed up their chances because they weren't able to complete the challenge. Turns out they won the room most likely and ended up winning second place champion. So attitudes make a difference. So make sure that you don't let one thing that happens in a tournament dictate the whole tournament day for you, because it really is, there's so many different components. Don't let one dictate your attitude. Again, the robot will not work every time. It is very inconsistent. It is a toy, and that's to be expected. But have fun with that. The key thing is, I don't track scores. I don't want my teams thinking about that, and I don't want the parents worried about that. Our goal is to be in the top 40%, not necessarily to have the highest score. The other key thing is have fun. And there's this thing in Lego League called core values and gracious professionalism. And it's very important for the teams, but it's also just as important for the parents. And to give you a good example, I was refereeing at a tournament at JMU, or GMU. And there was this team that had done well, and they were doing well throughout the day. And once you signed the scoring sheet, the score is official. The kids from that team had signed off. This is the score. This is what we achieved. And one of their parents, because the referee had missed something, because they're all volunteers, this may be the first day they've seen it, they're going to make a few mistakes. And this parent was getting in this referee's face and was being very unprofessional, wasn't showing gracious professionalism. And so I stepped in and had a conversation with them. And again, he was very like, this, you got to make this count, all this stuff. And I explained to him that, hey, this is what happened. This is how this works. The coach pulled him back, said it's okay, kind of thing. If I had wrote that team's number down and passed it to the judging room, that team would not have won the championship award that they won. They would have been completely eliminated for that. So do remind your parents that their attitudes and their actions are also observed, and they do count for the team or against the team. When you get to a tournament, for the parents, it is really just a lot of waiting. And you'll typically in the cafeteria, so they could have, it's 10 minutes of excitement watching the 2.5-minute runs and 6 hours of boredom. When you check in, the one thing you're going to need, if you don't have this template, you can find it online, is 4 copies of the information sheet. This actually plays a critical role because this is how the judges, that picture helps a lot for the teams. I mean, for the judges to remember your team and things like that. So when you walk in, the judge will most likely already have that, or you give that to them. Actually, you give it to them when you walk into the room. So make sure you give one of those to the judges, and that's going to help them remember your team. And the picture becomes a key piece. The other is the consent forms. There are 2 types of consent forms. Last year they moved to where parents could go and do the consent online, and then you can just print out the master sheet. And there's also individual sheets you can fill out. So this is actually at the FLL website, and your parents have to actually go in and give permission and do some things like that, and you'll see like there's a list of who's completed that. Any questions on like your check-in piece? Okay. I always carry a couple extra information sheets just as safety. When you get there, you're going to have a pit area. This is typically going to be the cafeteria. And that's where, one is you want to set up like a display, like basically a trifold, and talk about your team, talk about your research project. You can have your robot. This is the case where we had a medical dispenser, and the girls are showing that off, and it actually just dispensed Tic Tacs, so it was very popular. There's also a concept of swaps. A lot of teams do, like they'll give stickers or like kind of like Girl Scouts thing, where they give like little trinkets or something that represents their team. You don't really have to do it. It just kind of makes up for the fun spirit. You'll see a lot of fun hats and different things. It's all part of the spirit. But a lot of times it's just sitting around waiting because it can be a long day. Right before your tournament, you're going to get this email from your tournament. Once they decide what they look at the tournaments based on the order they were received and what those preferences are. Has everyone here already put in their tournament submissions? Okay, so it's all based on time, and then they print it out, and Karen does a phenomenal job of bringing all those together. But you're going to, and this goes into a system, so you're going to get this list. And what I would recommend is you'll get it for every team, is print out just your teams, like as a PDF, and then send that to your parents so they don't have to go dig through it. Coaches meeting is very important because that's where you're going to learn about a lot of logistics around the venue more than anything, and anything that may have popped up last minute. You're going to have a head judge and a head referee. They're very open, and you can talk to them and things like that. There's no issues there. And they'll just kind of walk you, and then you'll have a tournament director, and they can help you coordinate and make sure you get to your rooms on time. Good idea is, once you kind of know your room assignments, is to send a parent around and say, hey, can you go find all the different rooms where we have to be before the tournament starts? And that way, you're kind of getting the parents involved, and they'll help get the teams there. When you get to your judging rooms, though, remember there's another team most likely already inside. And so get your team comfortable with lining up in the order they're going to go in, and also being quiet, because there's nothing more frustrating as a judge when you're trying to focus on the team that's in the room and it's the team outside the room getting your attention. And so for core values and so forth, just make them mindful of, shh, no talking in the halls. And then you'll have monitors and so forth that will help monitor that too, and they'll give you kind of a very gracious way of saying, hey, can you guys keep it down? But that's typically what it is. You maybe have things that are very tight together, but then you also have very different gaps. As you go to competition, again, this is like the killer setup. This is at Legoland last year, but I wanted to show you kind of how it's set up. You'll typically have in the section 4 tables, if it could be up to 6 or 8, depending on how big the venue is. Most elementary schools, you're going to see 4 tables, a table 1, table 2, 3 and 4, A, B, C, and D, or red, blue. They have different ways of labeling and coloring them. They are back to back, so you know how you have the mission of getting the containers over to the other side kind of thing. That's the co-opetition thing. And so you'll start, the way it will start is you'll get the 1, 2, 3 Lego. You got your 2.5 minutes to make your run. Typically you have a little bit over a minute to do setup. If you're doing anything with color sensors and things like that, is anyone here using sensors? Okay. You'll have a chance, like if you're doing line fill or anything, you can calibrate and thing there. If the lighting's not changing, you're not going from different rooms. If the lighting's staying the same, your calibration from the first time should be fine. But that's typically what a setup looks like. I thought that's the coolest one I've seen, was that kind of setup. For your first time, so you'll have your 2 things. So you typically have an area for spectators, a line. And then the way it works is you have 2 starters, is what I call them. There's other term, or technicians is another term that they're called. They can be at the table at one time. The rest of the team has to stay behind a tape line. Typically, they'll have a tape line for them to stay behind. There are 2 ways to do starting. Is you could just have 2 people designated, and you could rotate around and say, okay, you 2 do run 1 and run 2. These 2 are going to do run 3 or run 4. You can also basically rotate around. They start it, they run, get behind the line, 2 other people come in. You just can't have but 2 technicians at the table at one time, but you can rotate. And again, that's a preference thing, and what works best for your team and for your team's age. Because starting can take a lot of practice too, and it's a very, everyone's watching. It's can be a little nerves can kick in a little bit, and the kids will make mistakes in that, and that's actually, I've seen kids just jump up and get mad. I've seen kids, when it starts working, they all get excited. But the key thing is they stay behind. The referee is going to walk. When they get done, they're going to get a scoring sheet. This is last year's. And Steve will typically share the list on the listserv, and you can practice your team. You won't be able to determine your score off of this because there's a scoring program that you use once this is turned in. But once they initial this, it is official. So that's the key thing. So make sure they're comfortable and know that you're going to have to sign something once you sign it. And I highly recommend they take time and negotiate. They get benefit of the doubt. Teach them how to negotiate benefit of the doubt. Like if the building's not knocked over, not quite as much, or something like that, they can negotiate that. You'd be surprised if they're willing to stand up for themselves and sign off on this, it can go a long ways. But the key thing is once it's signed, the score is official. And then this will get entered into the system. You'll see some tournaments have it on a display, others just write them down. This was scores from last year's Chantilly's tournament. And here's the key thing when I talk about the robot will fail. At Legoland last year, the team that got the highest score, their highest score was 763. Their lowest score was 75. So there's a huge variations. If you'd have put that 75 as their first run, or then, I don't know which run, actually it may have been their first run, is if they start taking their attitude and that's what they're focused on, it's going to hurt them trying to get to that 763 or hurt them in the judgment. That is the variance that you will a lot of times see. At this tournament, like this is McNair Robotics. Look at the variations of the scores. My team was, they were kind of consistent, but it really does drop down. Again, the practice round doesn't count, and it's the top score out of the 3 competition round scores. The root of all evil is the practice table. When my son volunteered at a tournament, he actually had to break up a fight between 2 adults. So you have a 14-year-old breaking up a fight between 2 coaches because robot's not working, and there's 2 tables or 4 tables, and everyone wants to get their time. You get a 2-minute limit or a 5-minute limit based on the tournament, what they're doing. And so it's high stress. And so, but one of the things to keep in mind, there's typically someone there who is helping run that. And I've seen more messages come back to the judging rooms from the practice tables than any other area in the tournament. And you'll get the note, hey, this team kicked this other team off, or they did something. You'd be surprised at what makes it back to the judging room from the practice table. So just be aware of that. Respect the limits. Be nice. Respect. Make sure you don't take any pieces from it, because it's very easy to walk away with the loop, or in this case, maybe a packaged airplane. And typically, you'll sign up for those when you first get there. My philosophy is, if we're not ready by now, practice table is not going to do us any good, kind of thing, even for the starters. So we tend to avoid the practice table unless we really see something that's off, and we just want to make sure we make a tweak, and we want to make sure that it's working. But we tend to avoid the practice table, especially when you get to at the state championship, at the VADC championship tournament, because you have this bright lit gym, and the practice room is in a wrestling room that's all dark. So if you're doing anything with sensors, the lighting variations is so bad, so different, that you'd have to do calibrations every time. The judging sessions, as I mentioned earlier, you can have 2 coaches / mentor, 1 historian. And this is a way for you, like my team will do a video, someone will videotape it. What we've done historically, now we don't go into the room, but the historian, then they have that and they'll share it with the rest of the parents. It's also good for the team to videotape the teams even during practice, because when they watch themselves, you'll get the jittery person who's sitting there the whole time doing this, or twirling the hair, or they get nervous, and those nervous twitches come out. And just by videotaping it, they'll see their nervous twitch, and they'll become confident in it. One of the things that I've done when I've had kids with nervous twitches, or especially if you go into the technical judge room and there's a table set up there with all the pieces, they have a tendency to want to go play with the pieces, which doesn't hurt you. It's just it makes the judge lose focus from what people are saying or doing to, hey, what's that kid doing playing with the ball, kind of thing. Is I give them a fidget stick. So I actually have like these little Lego shock absorbers, or anything with like a rubber band or anything they can put their hands on and just kind of get that twitch kind of thing. And they'll put it behind their backs, or they'll kind of do this. And the judges will never really notice, but it makes those kids feel comfortable. And those videotape their nervous twitches and show that to them so they're aware of it. But then also, if they have that, that's just nerves, and you're not going to fight it. But give them, take advantage of it. Give them something to put in their hands, and that will take care of it most of the time. Actually, not just your son. It's been every year I've got, I can tell you who they are. Key thing is when you walk in, typically for every judging room, you're going to have 10 minutes. I'll get into what happens in each room in the 10 minutes. Big piece is introduce yourself, and introduce yourself with enthusiasm and fun. My team actually makes a point of introducing the other person and saying something fun about them. Like, this is Caitlin. She went to a horse camp and she's scared of the horses. And it's just those little things that, one, it puts them at ease, but it shows that they're energy and they're having fun. Because having fun is really a big part of the core values and going into the judging rooms. And you want them to have fun. It helps take care of the nerves. The first thing let's jump into is talk about core values and what that is. And core values, it's kind of 2 parts to it. First part is you're going to get a surprise challenge. And that surprise can be something like act something out, build something tall, just very different challenges. And we've been publishing a list. I think tonight will be about 19 when the email goes out, of different challenges. But typically you'll have a time limit on that. And the judges are watching. It's not what your solution is. It's how you work as a team, and how you follow the core values of FLL. After you've kind of completed your challenge, the next thing that's going to happen is there's going to be like a 5-minute Q&A. How did you decide he was going to be the leader? Give me an example of gracious professionalism. And you'll have kids that'll be very quiet and not talk. And typically the judge, and you'll have one kid who wants to answer every question. So you've got to make sure that the room is balanced, because kids get very nervous and some get very talkative, others get very shy. And make sure that everyone on the team has an answer to what is gracious professionalism to you. As judges, we don't want to hear a recited definition. We want them to have internalized it, thought about what it means. And when we ask about core values or co-opetition, those are things you're always going to hear. Things to take into this room: information sheet, and you can do a core values poster. I'll show you kind of what those are. We had an example. Don't put a lot of things in your core value poster, because your time really will go fast here. Any questions on core values? Okay. Key thing: gracious professionalism, the 10 core values. I think it's 10. I may have the number wrong. And co-opetition. Those are the things that pretty much every person on the team should know. Core values poster, and you can see this online, is you could do a trifold, or you could do just a poster board. It just kind of helps to show, like, hey, if you've helped a bunch of teams this year, or if you've gone and volunteered at different activities, showing that does help. Like my team got the opportunity this year to meet Woody Flowers, who is the founder of FLL. So that's going to be front and center on our poster. But we also volunteered at different events, and we've mentored a lot of different teams. This is our poster from last year. You can see we mentored the Capital Girls, Girls on Fire. And then we just show ourselves having fun. We listed out what our team rules were, because as 7th graders, they got very chatty. So we kind of had to, and they got lost a little focus, so we had to come up with team rules. We shared those and how we did that, and we just show ourselves doing different core value activities. The way the core values room is judged, and the same goes for all rooms, is a thing called a rubric. And the rubric, you're going to get these back after each tournament, and the judges will do their best to put notes. They will circle different areas. They may circle accomplished or exemplary or in between based on where you are. They're trying to make this assessment in 5 minutes or in 10 minutes, and they usually have about 2 minutes to fill it out. So it's a very quick thing, but we try to give the feedback. So the thing for your team to know is know the rubric. So if you're doing core values, did we show inclusion? Did everyone feel part of it? And we had a case where we had a team, my team was talking about, like, oh, we each had jobs and we each had roles. And the judge goes, well, hey, what was your role? And they started going to a room and got to one kid, and he goes, I didn't have a role. And which would have been okay if the rest of the team hadn't turned to him and said, you had a role. And that just completely, so that happens. There's actually been fights in core values rooms, I think, in some cases. But it's all about always say yes, don't say no, yes if. And this is about showing how you work as a team. And I would highly recommend reading through the rubric with your teams and practice scoring with them when you give them a core value challenge, so they see how they're looking, because if you judge them down here, they're going to be very conscious of it. When you go into the technical judging room, there's going to be a table set up, but every time I've judged it technically, especially at states or at different tournaments, is, as I said, the robot never quite does what it's supposed to do. The first answer you will always get as soon as it doesn't do, like, well, it's always worked before. It's like, oh, really, let's go look at your scores and see what your scores are. But if you ever judge, which I highly recommend you do, you'll always hear that in the technical room. So you're going to have you'll have a mat and table set up. Go in ready to run the robot. You'll have 10 minutes. That 10 minutes can be show us all your runs, talk about your robot. This is their chance for them to demonstrate and show their strategy, their robot design, and their programming. Big thing to take in is have the robot on, because if you have to sit there and wait for it to boot up, you're killing your time. Robot attachments and all that. Program samples, and and the thing is don't be surprised if one judge says, all right, I want to talk to you two over here about your programming, and I want to have you, while you guys run that. So they may get split up, cross-train and cross-pollinate for that. I've had that happen to a team, because one person was very good at programming, but she did a lot of it, and she couldn't be in two places at once, so it didn't come across well for the team. So that does happen, but that's where you have multiple people. And what we do as a team is we put the programs up on the screen, and we make all three people who work on it, and we have the rule of three, where three people work on everything and can talk about everything. If you saw the board out there, we do a bigger presentation style, but we've also done trifolds and different things. There's really no right answer, but we like the way we do it now. You could walk in without any presentation material, but you're just really, your robot and your programs are your two best things to walk into this room. Again, it's going to be the rubric. What's the durability? What's the program quality? So if you're not using, if you're just basically doing point and shoot, or there's no sensors and things like that, that's going to be more of a beginning team. A senior level team that's using, where you can drop the robot from 3 feet and it won't come apart. There's just different things that the judge is going to look at to score. And the innovation piece, I think the thing that stood out to me at States last year was a team that used 3 light sensors. I thought that was really cool, because they had 2 up front and 1 in the back, and the one in the back, they used it to line square. I was like, that's pretty innovative. I hadn't seen that before. And you'll see a lot of cool things. And also, what's your process? What's your mission strategy? Did it change over time? Different things. Any questions on?
4 sensors altogether, right?
4 sensors connected. You could have as many sensors as you want on the robot.
Oh, okay.
That's the rule, because we have 5 sensors on ours, but one's not plugged in. So, because we went and looked that up. And you can have up to 4 motors. Most teams you'll see will have, because in the NXT you can only have 3, because that's how many ports it had. And so the EV3 does give you 4 ports. Most teams still will only do 3. Different things. Any other questions on technical? Okay. Then when we get to project, and I love project because we were going to move up to do FTC, but my team loved project so much they didn't want to give that up. So, we've gotten to launch weather balloons, to build Adrenos sitting right in here by meeting with a technical expert, meeting with search and rescue, getting to go to the Office of Emergency Management for Fairfax County, and also getting to go to a trash incinerator, which we did early in the summer, and kind of seeing how they convert trash to power, things like that. Stuff you can't go do as an adult, so that's what makes it fun. Project, again, there are 2 parts. From the moment you walk in the room, you have 5 minutes to do your presentation. Your presentation should follow the rubric. So what was the problem? What was your research? What was the solution? And how did you share? Those are the things that are really going to matter. The awards is at the regional tournament. You're going to have 2 main awards, as the champion and the second place champion. Those 2 typically get a bid to the next level. The next level is determined based on the number of teams in the state and what the percentage of those teams are at that tournament. They'll allocate, because the state championship tournament is fixed on how many teams it can take. Typically, you'll see at least 2 teams, but I've seen it can go as high as 4 depending on the size of the tournament. And your tournament, you won't know when you go into the tournament how many slots they have. So just because you don't win champion or second place champion, don't assume that you're not advancing, because you can still get an advancement. They'll announce that after they do all the awards. And we'll walk through how those are determined. The easy ones are robot performance. That's the highest score of all the tournaments, but it has to be in one of the scores that counts. It can't be in the practice run. Robot design, project, and core values. And then there's typically a judge's award. So if there's a team that didn't really qualify for anything, but just really demonstrated core values and spirit, kind of thing. Usually it's a rookie team. They'll get recognized. When you move up to different levels, you start seeing more awards where they start breaking things out. So core values end up with 3. Most of them end up with 3 from there. Questions on the awards? Your robot score, the only thing that matters is you have to be in the top 40% to be considered for a champion award. That's not a hard and fast rule. It can't, if it's on the line. We had a team at a tournament I was at a couple years ago where I was judging where this team actually ended up going to Worlds, where we were sitting in the judges' room and they did not have a score that put them in the top 40%, but they had won every room hands down. And so luckily their last run, they got that score and they were able to move forward, and then they went on to Worlds. But that's the thing that matters, is your robot, these scores don't matter and determine it. The only thing that determines is robot performance. The key thing is being in that top 40%. So what happens when you walk into a room? In the judging room, as you walk in, if you're the first team and you're 3-3-2-3, you're automatically first place because you're the only team they've seen. They score you. They fill out the rubric. As they see more teams, they start ranking the room. And they keep ranking the room, and out all the rankings, they still look at who's the first place team. Now, this first place team, let's say this is the core values room, may not end up getting a core values award. And the reason is they won champion or second place champion, so it would fall to the next team. And so they try to divide the awards around so that it's not just one team winning everything. You can only win one judging room award, and you could also win a judging room award and robot performance, but you can't win more than one of the judges' awards. Make sense? What happens is the teams go in, the judges go into a deliberation, they look at score. If you're not in the top 40%, you can't win champion or second place champion, so you start narrowing that down. They look at the room rankings, and then this Excel spreadsheet lays it out and says, do they qualify? And then there's also, based on how many slots they have for the next level or the next tournament, they'll determine how those bids come out. So when you go to a tournament, you'll hear all the judges' room awards and robot performance first, followed by champion or second place champion, then champion, and then they'll announce advancements to the next level. VADC is one of the bigger regions, and we typically now get 1 to 2 bids to Worlds. If you end up going to the championship level and you're not champion, there's still open tournaments that you can get invited to, like Legoland, like even to Africa and Australia and all these different places. My girls really wanted to go to Australia, but we just weren't going to pull that one off. And I didn't think they'd want to go to Legoland, but they did. But that's how the awards in the judging rooms work. Does that make sense? Okay. Because that's the biggest thing is someone will have, especially for parents, is they'll see that, hey, our team had the highest score. How come we didn't get a bid to states, or how come we didn't win champion? It's because that's one of 4 components, and it doesn't really get you to the next level. It's the judging rooms that really do matter. The biggest thing you can do, and what helped me the most, was actually volunteering at a tournament. And so I think we do the middle. I think we compete in the middle tournament. So I will judge at the first tournament and the last tournament kind of thing, just because you get that exposure. You see other teams, you get ideas, you see different things. But it is a great way to help your team and get parents involved. And there was one region we were looking at where they actually, you can't register your team for a tournament unless you have 2 volunteers signed up kind of thing. So highly recommend volunteering at a tournament. It's one of the best ways to learn. And that's really all I have. There's my email address, and you guys have it from the listserv. You can also get me at judge@FLL.DC, and I'm happy to send this presentation out so you don't have to take notes on that. Yeah, I'm sorry. There's 2 other resources that are highly valuable. One is I have a blog, FLL Starting Points, and I actually blog about our season and what we're doing and share all our resources. Like, we use badges to teach advanced programming skills, although we don't need them now. They just do it on their own. You don't have to explain what a loop is anymore, how to detect a line. EV3 Lessons is this really cool, 13-year-old, 12-year-old kids from last year as part of their world class. They built this website, and it's just taken off, and they've got it like in multiple languages. We actually advertise on their site, and these kids are just awesome. Very impressed. Trying to get them to be interns even at 14. But yeah, so that's all we have tonight. So if you have any questions or need ideas or just trying to figure out where to go next, we'll be around. Catherine's coached multiple years and judged at multiple tournaments and states tournaments, and I've judged at states, been to states, and coached. So we got a good resource, and we're always willing to help.